Great. So, hello, everyone. This is Mo from Educast International, and I'd like to welcome all of you in this webinar of our event in Ramadan, Elevate Your Teaching Practice. This event is a series of a series of webinars. I was listening to my voice on YouTube at the same time. So this event is a series of webinars where we are joined by ENT experts from different parts of the world to share their experience with us to talk about different topics. This event is sponsored by Syntax Solutions, Fluent Ties, Delta Bookstore, and Text Inspector. And for those who are here with us in every webinar, can have the opportunity to get a 1 month free trial to try, the tool Text Inspector. I'm gonna drop a link in the chat box sometime in this webinar, during this webinar, or at the end of this webinar, and people can go there to register for a free account. So today I'm joining you from Egypt, of course, but we have some people from outside Egypt. We have Dr. Ron Brain, who is currently in Germany. Hello, Dr. Ron. How are you doing?
Hello, and hello from very dark and cold and rainy Germany.
Hello. So, of course, we are joined by Mark Mietz from the Netherlands, but I think he's not available right now. So, let's go to Portugal. And today we have a wonderful guest who is Louise Westman. Hello, Louise. How are you doing?
Hello. I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Okay, that's great. It's all a pleasure. So today, guys, we have a wonderful webinar about active listening with young learners. But before we start, let me tell you a little bit about Educast, what we do, and this stuff. So Educast is an international organization that provides teachers with professional development opportunities to help them deepen and strengthen their knowledge and get exposed to different expertise from the same or different teaching content. Our vision is to make education affordable and obtainable for people from all backgrounds. Our effort is to always bring forward the latest methodologies of teaching for every teacher. We want to ensure that they are equipped with the knowledge of established as well as up and coming techniques of teaching. The goal is to make the educator proficient and globally viable. So everyone, let me introduce you to today's guest, or today's speaker, who is Louise Westman, the Senior Manager of Communities of Practice at the British Council. She is joining us from Portugal. She is passionate. She has always been passionate about teaching young learners in particular. She has over 20 years of experience. Am I right, Louise?
You are. What I'll do is I'm going to say, I'm flipping my thing. I've got a slide on it, but I'll flip. There you go.
Very good. Okay, so once you're ready, Louise, of course, we're glad to be having you here with us today. Once you're ready, please start.
Well, thank you for having me, and thanks for the introduction, Mohammed. As he's just said, I have about just short of 20 years teaching experience. I've taught across all ages and levels, but particularly specialised really there in early years and primary, because that's my favourite classroom. I've worked in both private schools and mainstream, so I've done both. And during this time, as happens with many of us, after several years in teaching, you get into teach training and mentoring and coaching of others. But recently, I've taken a little sideways step and gone down another route, and I've done some project management of an intercultural communication course, which is why I'm having a look at this today. And right now, as Mohammed already said, I'm in charge of communities of practice at the British Council, and what that means is a lot of the communities of practice are digital online places like our social media, and it's where people come together to learn. And a very important part of learning is being able to listen. Which is why I've chosen this today. So you can see that my fun fact is that I am a terrible listener. I'm absolutely rubbish at listening. Something I've always been aware of growing up, needing to pause. And I think because of not being particularly good at it, it's something I've actually had to invest my time in becoming better at, particularly looking at like managing, but like coaching, mentoring, and helping to build relationships that way. But also noticing it comes in very, very useful for it can be very useful for lots of reasons. Managing conflict. So as a manager, things like managing parents and talking to them, lots of great things. I'm going to jump backwards if I can. Actually, just to quickly say, so in this talk, what I hope to do with you today is give you a very quick idea of what active listening is, to highlight some of the benefits of active listening in the classroom, and to show you some techniques. Very easy, quick techniques that you can use. Not using any particular special materials, using the materials we normally use. And have a little look about why this is important, or why I think this is important myself. I think it's good to start with a little bit of what is active listening. So just to take a moment here, not to listen to me, and just to have a look at the comment that is there on the screen. So something that we do in the classroom is we do teach listening and how to develop listening skills. How does active listening, sometimes called intentional listening, how does it sit apart? It doesn't really sit apart as such, but it's about how you receive the information that you're hearing. So quite often in the classroom, we're really focused on like transactional dialogues. Maybe we want to go to a cafe, we want to ask for a coffee, and we do that, we ask how much it's going to be, and we focus with our students on this kind of transactional event. So you want some information, or you want something, and you're trying to get it. And we get used to the patterns and we fall into this. We don't always practice as much the kind of more spontaneous dialogues, and this is really where active listening comes in, and kind of focusing on others. The reason why I think it's important, so if you're a teacher who's ever said any of these comments, have a look here at these ones, you might find it's useful for you. Just do a quick pause as you read. Lots of things can happen in our classrooms, particularly young learner classrooms. Lots of developing personalities there. At times, the class doesn't seem to be gelling. There might be lots of noise. It's quite disruptive. Perhaps your students are all rushing to get to the end of activities and get to the end of the answer. Perhaps it feels quite competitive at times, and maybe overly competitive, and this is something you want to kind of reduce. For all these reasons, I would advocate that active listening is a great skill to bring into the classroom. Active listening itself it's a great classroom management technique. So if you've got it and it's part of your routines and it's part of what you do, you will slowly see, and I say slowly because it does develop over time, the relationships change with some of the students in your group as they get to know each other better, because the purpose behind active listening is really to actually hear more about what the person is telling you about themselves. I think recently we've all seen a lot of news about AI and everything that's coming, and we've got some great tech and everything, but the need still for our students to have very strong communication skills and critical thought and critical thinking skills. This is still like quite at the fore of what we're looking at in our teaching, and active listening forms a part of this. And also, and I think this is very important, I say nowadays more than ever, but I think we're all more aware of it coming out of the pandemic, is about how our students feel and their well-being and their mental health. And active listening is a great way to kind of develop the social emotional learning, and a great way to have students feel heard and respected in the classroom. So at this point, what I would like to do just for 5 minutes is to actually show you what active listening is in its absolute purest form, so everyone is clear about what it is. Ron, can I ask you to come on and join me for a second.
I'm here.
Hello, thank you, thank you. Right, Ron, I'd just like to know, basically, how has your week been?
It's been busy. I've had some ups and some downs, but busy. I have a lot of catching up to do because I'm on holiday right now. So I'm working from home, trying to catch up, and trying to relax as well. So yeah, but it's been busy, and I'm taking care of some personal things at home too. Not only catching up on work, but catching up on household things, like fixing things, things like that. So that's how my week is, or has been.
You use the word busy a lot. I don't know if you're aware. And you repeated it 3 times. And you seemed a little hesitant in how to describe your week. Would you say that's fair?
I'm not hesitant, but probably held back and not trying to go into details about what's keeping me busy. But I think you did hit that right, that I did repeat that quite a few times because that's sort of how I see it, just doing.
And how does it make you feel? Is it enjoyable to have weeks like this one?
Well, I think it's sort of a normal week. I'm just a busy person. I like to stay busy. I have my downtimes where I don't want to do anything. But staying busy it's me. That's my personality. So I stay busy with work, reading. When I say busy, I don't mean just work. I mean working in my garden, going shopping, just doing things that keep me busy. But when I relax, that's my downtime. And relaxing for me is probably watching some crazy show on television, just to sort of just tune out, or just grabbing a book and reading. I do a lot of reading. And that's relaxing for me, actually. So some people would say I'm working, but I'm not. I like reading. Or I'll just listen to some music or the radio. I love to listen to the radio while I'm cooking.
Lots of actions.
Yeah, it's a lot of action, but I'm always doing something.
No, it tells it's an insight into, I think, who you are. Lots of action. Like I say, not down moments. Reading's a down moment, isn't it? But filling. Would you say is it fair to say you like to fill your time to feel productive?
No, I don't see it that way. Like I'm filling my time. I know that there's things I have to do. That I do know. I mean, there's, I'm a teacher. I got to check papers. I got to, do planning, do some lesson planning, and catch up on that. So that's stuff I have to do. But working in my garden, that's also keeping busy, but I don't have to do that. I do that for pleasure. I don't have to cook, but I want to eat something decent, healthy. So, I cook. But if I'm going to cook, I have to go shopping. And because I like to eat fresh vegetables and, everything fresh. Reading, well, I got to get to the bookstore to get books, and I got to go to the library. I get a lot of stuff from the library. And so I'm at the library at least once a week. So, yeah. And then I think just, catching up on my health, that's important too, my wellness. And so resting, relaxing, just laying down sometimes and just no sound at all, no television, no radio, no reading, things like that. And yeah, those all kind of keep me busy, but busy doesn't always mean for me doing something. Busy can also be for me doing nothing. Just busy doing nothing.
No, that's fair enough. So am I right in saying that, so obviously you enjoy your work and you enjoy reading. Is the reading is sometimes connected to work and sometimes not? It could be for both, would you say?
Oh, I try not to do that, but I do have to do a lot of reading for my work, a lot, to do a lot of research. And so I would say about maybe 50% of what I read is work related.
Okay. Yeah.
The other 50%, I try to say that that's just for pure enjoyment, but sometimes it turns out to be 70% of what I'm reading is work related.
I think we've all been there.
Yes, we're teachers.
Exactly. Oh, thank you for sharing all that with me. I think if it's fair, what I've learned about you in the last 5 minutes is that you're someone, you have quite a range of like very rich kind of hobbies and interests. So you mentioned reading a fair bit, but also you talked about your garden a lot. I think, and linking to your garden, it was linked because of the order that you spoke about it in. But you talked about cooking as well and enjoying fresh fruits and fresh vegetables, and the getting out to go. You get out quite a lot because you've got to go to obviously buy your food, but also to go and get any books that you may wish to read. Something I thought that was very interesting as well is that you mentioned when you were describing all the things that you like and what keeps you kind of, I say what occupies your time, what you're doing. You also mentioned something, struck it out with me about having no sound. And sometimes you just like to remove all sound. So thank you. I feel I've learned a lot about you in that 5 minutes.
Thank you.
A quick question, last question, not this question.
Mhm.
How comfortable or not was it having that interaction? Because I probably, hopefully, didn't interject. How comfortable was it in your part?
Well, I know that I sort of felt that I was being interviewed, but other than that, it's comfortable in the sense that you weren't asking uncomfortable things. It stayed, pretty, I would say, like two people having small talk in a way. And I don't feel that I revealed anything private. I would say that to anybody that I know. And most of my students know that about me. I say that in the beginning when I introduce myself to students about my garden, cooking, reading, and that those are important to me. So it didn't make me feel uncomfortable at all. No, it was okay.
Oh, that's good. I know it can. That's all. It depends on the person. But hopefully, in that interaction there, and thank you, Ron. What I wanted to show is active listening in its purest form is asking a question, allowing the person to answer and to say whatever they want, but also hopefully at times you also notice the things that I was doing. So for example, trying to summarize to make sure that what I'd understood was what Ron was actually trying to share with me, and that we were agreeing on that. I think that's important. But also to clarify as well. So I think I asked, when you said busy, I asked you used the word busy a lot, just to see whether that was something that you reacted to or, wanted to talk about a bit more. And to clarify what you meant by it. And later on, you did say I don't mean it as like a bad thing. I mean it as that, I have lots of things. I'm like to be doing things. And it became clear to me what it meant to you. And I won't lie, initially, when I say the word busy, and this is purely me because it's my context, but I bring to it, I say some negativity to the word, like.
Yeah, I think that's a matter of perception of the word busy. But,
Yeah.
I would like to add that what I noticed is that you made it about me. You didn't do any, what's called ping pong story exchanges, where I say something and then you say something about yourself. You made it about me. You concentrated on me. Everything, like I said, I felt like I was being interviewed, but that's okay. That you made that about me because you were trying to find out about me. And it's like giving somebody their maybe instead of 15 minutes of talk, but like Andy Warhol's 15 minutes of fame, but you gave me like 5 minutes to talk about myself by using questions. I thought that was interesting.
Good. So I think I say segue, we're going to go backwards, but I'm going to jump backwards a little bit to the initial quote to share with you. The point of active listening, and in its purest form, which we've just seen there, is to allow people to listen. And at the end of the day, we're English language teachers, and we're teaching our students a language to study and to get jobs. But what they're going to be doing when they're studying and working is they're going to be talking to colleagues, to friends, and they're going to be discussing things and maybe bringing different perspectives, not always agreeing about something. And the ability to listen to someone, and as I think also you pointed out, it's not just a ping pong, they say something, you reply, they say something, you reply. We fall into habits with this as English language teachers, as of course we do, because that's it's in every course book. It's like where every dialogue is constructed around. But the point I'd like to make today is that there is space also to have these kinds of like listening opportunities as well. So obviously I'm not saying get rid of all the other things that we do them for a very good reason, but allow your students to have that kind of opportunity as well to actually listen to each other, and it will feed into their relationships and hopefully build them and deepen them, and it will hopefully build levels of trust, and people will learn a lot more about one another and about what they think, and become a bit more comfortable with hopefully difference and disagreement, and it's not be a conflict. And I think if we're looking at the world today and we're looking at particularly social media, which I work in, that kind of avoiding a knee-jerk reaction, giving a person space to ask them more questions about what they mean, not assuming that you know what they mean, but actually genuinely using the language to try and find out more and to learn a little bit more about what exactly they meant, and to give them the time and space to do that. So I think this is a fantastic skill for all of us, language learners or not. But I think given that we are English language teachers, it sits very well in our classroom as a skill that we'd like to develop, as something that we want our students to be able to do in the future, to allow them to speak to others effectively. So what we just saw with Ron and myself there was a very kind of pure, at its purest. That's what active listening's like. It is a little like an interview, which is the word that Ron used. It's a person having the space to fully share everything that they wish to. And I think, again, Ron commented on this, and it's true. It's about what you want to share. You're not forced to share anything that you don't want to. But the point of me, the listener, is to just kind of share with the person who's speaking what I'm picking up about what they're saying and how it's coming across to me. And at one point, I did ask Ron a question and said, you sound like very, very busy all the time. And he said, no, I just fill my time, which allowed him to say, no, that's not how I meant it. And just to clarify that, which again gives me some information. So if we'd like to develop this, and it's something to develop over time, something to do with our students, how would we go about it? Well, let's start straight away in the primary classroom, let's jump in there into the young learner classroom, let's jump into young learners and jump into primary. I'm going to use today as an example here, I'm going to use an example from the British Council website, Teach English website. It's free on here. I can share it with you at the end, but you can all have a look at this lesson and see why I've chosen this particular one. So this lesson is level 1, and it's with the students. They're exploring the different types of learning and what the future of learning might look like. So, how to take normal lesson materials, so your course book, lesson materials like this one from a website, how to take them and how to start kind of doing a little bit of active listening with your students at a very young age. Okay, one great activity that you could do with your students is the use of visuals. We all do it, you know, we all do it quite a lot. I'm going to grab a book here. We all do quite a lot with our students, you know, and covering sections. What do you think you can see? What's coming next? What's coming next? This is a very, you know, normal technique in the primary classroom. Pictures are everywhere, so let's use them, and they're great for developing listening. So here we have a picture, and we have a girl sat in the middle. What I would do with this at this stage is I would be asking my students to tell me what they can see. Describe this picture to me. Does it look like a normal picture? Is there anything strange about this picture? I think as we see it right now, it looks perfectly, yeah. There's a girl sat holding something in her hands, maybe some food. She's sat, she's got her book next to her, picture behind her. It all looks very normal and probably like many of our living rooms. So, you know, ask the students to narrate and to share with you what they see. After that, I would ask them, what do they think might be over here? And obviously you can see the outline here. We've got a little bit of a clue. It's a good place to start where there's a clue. We've got like what looks like a photo frame. Ask them, what do they think is going to be in there? It probably wouldn't be surprising for them to say a photo of a family, given that we've got, you know, a family photo there in front of us already. And I would just start asking them, what do they think is around the girl? What do they suspect? I give them this handout then, and I tell them that I'm going to describe to them the rest of the picture. And I would. And I'd describe the picture, and I'd ask them to listen and to draw what they hear. At the end, I give them a chance to compare their pictures, go around, have a look. Have they all drawn the same thing? What differences have they got? It's a great opportunity for someone who's perhaps drawn something differently to the others to go, oh, 3 other people have, you know, drawn this and I've drawn that. I think I might be wrong. And just, I would stand back at this point and allow them to change their picture if they wanted, not to intervene too much. You never know, they might be right, but I would let them have that kind of peer check opportunity to go to talk to others about what they saw. And then I would share with them the final picture, which I'm going to share with you now, which is here. And as you can see, we've gone from what was quite an ordinary picture to being a less ordinary picture. We've gone from having a girl sat on the sofa with a picture of a family behind, and if we look now, it's really quite different. Admittedly, when you're reading the description to this one, because all of this it's all quite strange and futuristic, because obviously it's about linked to the lesson, students are probably going to make mistakes, which is another reason why I said allow them time to compare and to check and, you know, to have a look. With this lesson plan, you're actually given the description. And what I would say is, while you're doing it, the students might say, Miss, what did you say? What's next to her foot? What's on the right? What's on the left? Absolutely repeat it, describe it again. You know, if they want to go back and describe a part of the picture again, do that. It's absolutely fine. So like allowing the students to interject, allowing them to kind of control your pace. This isn't a recording. It's not like you press the play button and they have to listen to the end. They can interject. They can go and ask you questions. They can, you know, ask you to clarify things. This is the whole point. Obviously, you're going to have to provide them with some language there. You're going to have to provide them with some with some classroom language. And it's a great opportunity over time, if you do an activity like this and you continually do visuals like this, to actually build up a lot of functional language, like, you know, what's on the right hand side, what's on the left hand side, what's top, what's the bottom. So you've got like the actual layout itself, and you say like, what did you say about? And there's lots of kind of functional language there for clarification as well. And build it up with the students and get to the point where hopefully towards the end of the year, the school year, or it depends on the level, maybe end of term, if you've done this activity a few times, you'll say, oh, we're going to do this activity, we've done it before, we're going to describe the picture, what language, what might be useful for you. And you can all board it straight away. You can have monitors come up, put the words on the board. And before you actually sit and describe it, the students have behind them on the board like a whole list of kind of stems and chunks of language that they can use to stop you, check, clarify. So that gives them that level of control and the feeling that they're not just being spoken to, but they can control what's being said to them, and they can interject and ask questions. So that is how I would use this particular lesson, and that would develop active listening, because it's asking students to take ownership of the listening. You know, they're not just passive, they're not just listening, but to ask further questions, to ask, you know, to get involved with the listening. It also allows an opportunity, I think, which is good, to kind of like confer and check with others as well. I think that's very healthy. You know, quite often when we hear something on the news, we would check in with the person next to us, and did you understand that the same way I did? It's a very normal, I say it's a normal thing to do, but it's a skill, and it develops this kind of the skill. As you can see, it is quite a difficult one. So after the, you know, at the end, I would give them the picture, and I'd let them compare it to their own. We could do a little bit to spot the difference. I wouldn't be doing this it would tell me something about their ability to listen. It would tell me something potentially about their grammar or their lexis, if it was the fact that there was words in here and vocabulary they didn't know. Of course, I'd have to consider that before doing this activity. You know, do I have to pre-teach any words? Do they know the word like lamp? Or, you know, do they know the word tree? Checking all these kinds of things. And like, you know, we've got spaceship over here. You know, do they know all these words, and will they be able to do this? But you know, alternatively, it's a good way to kind of, if you think they know most of it, it's a great way to kind of check their knowledge and to check their understanding, to do an activity like this. And it's fun. And it embraces lots of other skills, because in our classroom, obviously, we have students, they're constantly asked to produce through their speaking, they're constantly asked to produce through writing, but this is a great way actually as well to be quite creative and to ask them to do something a bit more artistic. And we will have learners who will flourish and thrive, and others who don't enjoy it as much, which is why we do these things a bit eclectically, and we have a nice mix. This is one example of a primary classroom activity that would develop active listening. There are others, so I'll quickly share with you a few. You probably know them, but you might know them by other names. We've got popcorn storytelling. So this would be a circle time activity. Lots of us, if we've got a primary class and we have the room and the space, we might sit down together in a big circle on the floor. Imagine recently we have been studying food. This is the example I've got here. I'm with a class who's maybe about 6-7 years of age. They've been studying different kinds of food. And I'd give them the sentence. I went to the supermarket and I bought. And I drill it. I went to the supermarket and I bought. I went to the supermarket and I bought. I went to the supermarket and I bought. We whisper drills, shouting drills, but we drill that stem. Okay. And then I would say, I went to the supermarket and I bought. And there's different ways to do this. It depends on the level. I would either say an apple, or I might take a flashcard from the floor and say an apple. Okay. We might have been doing, as this example kind of insinuates, we might have been doing the alphabet recently. And I would say, okay, apple, and we'd point to the A of the alphabet, and just to reinforce the idea that I've taken the A there, an apple. And then I would encourage the next person, or if I'm lucky enough to actually have, some of us sometimes have teaching assistants, it depends, we may have someone in the classroom if we've got a student with particular needs. If there's anyone else in that classroom, I would prep them in advance, and I would have them do the next sentence so that we can model this. If not, I would go and probably choose one of the stronger students who's more confident speaking and also not, afraid to make a mistake. And I get them to say the next sentence, which would be, I went to the supermarket and I bought an apple and some bread, or whatever they want to choose, and some biscuits. And that would be if we're doing the alphabet, obviously. If we've got flashcards in the middle, we just pull one out. It could be, I was going to say broccoli, but that's another B. It could be milk, cheese, whatever they happen to bring. And we go around our circle. And if we did use flashcards, we wouldn't be sharing them with others. And people would have to listen to what people are saying and to kind of remember that and to repeat it, so that the sentence gets longer and longer. And we see how far we can get. Again, I wouldn't make it a test or too, I say, stressful for my students. If they don't know, they can't remember, they look at someone and go, oh, I can't remember what they said. Allow the others to interject, allow them to share with them, because I think it's very important that you can ask for clarification. What did they say? What did they say? Can you tell me? Again, it's part of a natural kind of listening skill, and get them to fill it in, and to really kind of release any kind of pressure on this kind of activity. And we go around and see how much they can remember. When I've done this in the classroom, I've had students who sat down and wanted to try and remember it all and write the longest sentence ever. And of course, you could take this into a writing activity if you wanted to afterwards. Other primary activities are simple things like Simon Says. We've all played it. We've got, Simon Says, touch your head, touch your toes. Just by removing the word Simon Says, having to listen very carefully, that is active listening. That is, actually having to truly listen to the words and recognize the words, and to, what have I got to do next? Obviously, to kind of provide other varieties, you don't have to stick to body parts. It could be you moving to things like daily activities. Simon Says, brush your hair. Simon Says, you're brushing your teeth. Simon Says, you're putting on clothes, and you can act them out as you go. Another primary activity is spot the difference storytelling. This is, a lot of us tell stories, especially with our primary students. If you've got quite a nice short story and you'd have time to read it twice, read it once, involve the students, read it aloud to them, get them involved, then read it again, but this time make some changes. Do they notice the changes? Can they hear them? Can they go, oh, teacher, that's not what you said. That's not true, it's this. And get them involved and to actually listen to the difference, so that they're kind of, again, they're being primed to probably, you're likely to be using your tone of voice to kind of suggest maybe some of the changes in the story. They're becoming a bit more used to listening to that kind of tone of voice change and nuance there. They're also actually being forced to listen to every word that is being said. Final two activities that would also, help with active listening: 20 questions. So if you're not aware of this activity, a standard way to play it, but there's lots of ways. It's like, I'm thinking of something, and normally, let's say it's, we'll go back to food because it's a very easy example. We studied food, all know lots of words, and the other students have to ask questions to work out what's in my head. And maybe we've even drawn it on a small piece of paper, on a little board, and that we're holding it this way. And everyone has to ask us questions like, is it fruit? Is it green? Do I eat it at breakfast? It's a great way to practice question forms, but also they have to listen to each other, because then you get 20 questions and they don't want to waste them. So they have to make sure they're actually listening to what other people have asked, so that they can deduce what it is that you're is on your board, what it is that, you know, the item that you're concealing. And lastly, the final activity that I'd recommend with primary, although there are more than this, but this is a sample of activities you could do, is you could look at, I say, how are they feeling? So quite often, when we're doing recordings in the classroom, people, you know, they're meant to be real life situations. Part of active listening is actually picking up on kind of like the change in intonation, change in voice. So something that you could be doing, if it's a good example in the materials that you have, maybe there is one person who's getting angry, slowly getting angry with the other person because there's been some kind of misunderstanding. Maybe they gave them the wrong change, for example, in a cafe. Focusing on how people are feeling, and do this quite regularly. So every time you're listening to something, how are these people feeling? How do you think? How do you know that? And have a look at any pictures that accompany to check and make sure that they're, you know, they're correct and that they're hearing it right. Because we don't often do a lot. Well, it depends. Some people do, but around in our classrooms of actually teaching students to really pick up on those kind of cues that people have, whether they're audio cues or whether they're visual cues that people kind of embed into what they are saying. So these are all ideas for the primary classroom, but this is tips for all young learners. So I thought I'd put in a quick secondary classroom activity as well. Just leap forward again. I'm going to use Teaching English website. This one, as you can see from the top, it's a lesson about art, and it's a lesson about students discussing art and what is art. It's a controversial topic, but I think one that we all agree that we all have very different tastes when it comes to art and what we might enjoy and what we might think is, I say valid, but you know, should be celebrated. This suggestion for the secondary classroom, of course, with the secondaries, you could use any of the activities I've just listed there for the with the primaries. A lot of them would work with our secondaries, especially those maybe who are lower level. But if you're looking to do something with maybe a bit higher levels, a very simple technique a lot of us use is the think, share, pair. But this is a great opportunity to practice active listening. So students have a look at a picture, like maybe this one that's here, and you ask them, what do you think of this? Do you think that this is art? When they're sharing, I would put in a few rules just to add here. I would put in some rules. So, and I would create them with the students, and hopefully over time, the more we do this kind of activity, the more they can kind of tell me what the rules are. But the rules would be things like, do not interrupt the person who's talking. Just, you know, listen, don't interrupt them. Remember, it's okay to have different opinions. The purpose is not to make someone agree with yours here. The purpose is just to understand the other person and what they think. If you want to ask clarifying questions, if you want to check and that you've understood them, go ahead and do it. If you have a follow-up question, if they've said something you think is really interesting at the end and you want to find out more, ask them it. So I build some rules around it, and obviously with an activity like this, we would model it in the classroom before allowing everyone to go and do it. Again, using the board, probably building a bank of kind of questions that, you know, people might want to use to kind of ask follow-up questions or to ask clarifying questions, and putting them on the board so that the students have them. So very simple, think, share, pair. And I could do that with my secondaries as well. You're going to say we've done this already. We did. But with the secondaries, especially as our students get older, and potentially if they're getting more fluent into higher levels, and we're looking maybe more intermediate level, B1 level, we can move into activities a little bit like the one that I did with Ron at the beginning. In fact, you could do that. So how's your week been, or how was your weekend? It could be your opening routine in your lesson, if that's something that you would like to have. It's a nice way for students to greet each other. It's a great way to start the week. to actually listen and learn a little bit about their partner and who they're working with this week, and to learn a little about their life. So you could use it for that. Alternatively, another great kind of way to use active listening is reflection, right at the other end of the lesson. So maybe the question, what did you learn today? And asking your partner to tell you, what did they learn? It might not have been the Lexis or the grammar that you were teaching or that you hoped that they would learn. It could be that it was something else. Like they might have learned something interesting about someone in the class, or they might have learned a fact that they didn't know or shocked them. Allow the students to find out what that person learnt. By having someone say what they actually learned and having to kind of put it into words themselves, it's a great way to get our students involved in their own assessment and their own kind of sense of progress. A great activity to jump out of that is if you are doing like class journals and you're having the students write down very quickly, what they've actually learned and everything in a day. Do the speaking first and then write down what they've learned in a class journal. And obviously you can use this kind of activity with anything like IELTS, and you've got lots of debates and you've got lots of like big statements like, I am for capital punishment, I'm against capital punishment, for example. That would be one that you might get in the IELTS, and you can use this to, like, someone can just talk, and it's a great way to generate ideas and start thinking about topics. And it works really, really well before you do any kind of writing task, to kind of really kind of get out all the ideas so that students feel confident when they come to doing the writing, that they've explored lots of different possibilities they can talk about. So I'm conscious of time. These would be quick blitz through lots of different activities you could do in the Young Learner classroom if you wanted to build active listening. I've taken this nice, I like this diagram from Education Corner that kind of summarizes what active listening is. It's the focus on all these different things. It is essentially the focus on understanding, and understanding the person that you're talking to. You're not trying to get anything from them, you're just trying to genuinely understand what they're saying to you. And lastly, I mean, the importance of it. I hope you feel, having seen a few of the ideas today and watched me and Ron talk, that you can see its value. I would say that for me, it's the importance of being heard, having my voice heard. And even for us shyer students in the class who might not want to do like activities like this in front of people, but the sense that someone's listening and hearing what they're saying and what they're sharing, which is very important for many reasons. I think it helps us build the relationships, as I've said. So it's a classroom management tool, but also it helps us to handle difference, which is great for communication and intercultural communication as students grow and develop. It's great for our well-being and our health, and it's great to feel valued and recognised, and it helps to build resilience, which is a word that we hear a lot of people talking about. And also it helps us to evaluate and build this kind of critical thought, and to understand sometimes what people need from us. Quite often we jump in and want to just say, oh, that happened to me, or but actually to really listen to someone and work out what they want from you. Do they want you just to listen? Do they want you to coach them? Do they want you to advocate for them? What do they want from you? Which is a very important skill. So personally, I'm a very big fan of active listening. I hope that you all feel you've got something from this today. I'm just sharing here these are the links to the lessons that you just saw me using there. If anyone's taking any screenshots or anything, these are the links to the lessons there. And if you are looking for further reading, there's tons to do, but these are nice bite-sized kind of articles that I've found very useful when learning about this topic, that you might want to have a look at yourself. And the reason I put down the last one, the NHS England, is going back to resilience and talk about well-being. There's a lot of talk about teenagers and about teenagers under pressure with exams and their sense of, well, their mental health, essentially. So the NHS, which is the hospital board in the UK, has written a lot about active listening and how it can be really great for building relationships and for having people be heard as a result. So it's been advocated as well by medicine as well as by teachers to use in the classroom. There you go.
Thank you, Louise.
Thank you.
I'd like to just summarize some quick points. I really like that you talked about drilling. I don't think there's anything wrong with old-fashioned sort of teaching methods like drilling, because I think it can be very effective. I really like the way you used that model sentence. I went to the supermarket and bought. And now I think normally a teacher would write that on the board and teach maybe the verb to go and to buy. So here my question is, how much should we pre-teach when we're doing something like this for young learners or low-level learners? How much should we do? Like one sentence, two sentences, three sentences?
I think it very much depends what the objective of the lesson is. So with that particular example, a lot of people have asked me, would I pay attention? I've used it with very young learners, by the way. I've used it with like 4-year-olds. Would I pay attention?
I used it with grown-ups, Louise.
Yeah, no, exactly. Would I pay attention to it being the past simple? No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't at all. I'm just teaching it as a chunk of language.
Yeah,
I went to the supermarket and I bought something that they can use, something that is in a context and they know exactly what it means. I went to the supermarket, you've got a picture of the supermarket on the board, and I got, this is what I got. And it just gives them a sentence that they can use and replicate to explain to someone what they're doing.
Well, you mentioned using flashcards,
yes.
Images, because they would have to learn the vocabulary with pictures. And I went to I've done it so many times that I have my flashcards, I put them on the table face down so that they don't see it. Everybody picks 2 or 3. Yep. And then we just do rounds, of they have their cards and they pick one. Maybe somebody might have watermelon. I went to the supermarket and bought watermelon,
yep.
or a watermelon. And they can play like that, but it's drilling where we're using flashcards. And again, back to my question, do we pre-teach the grammar, which would be verbs, in this case, irregular verbs, which you're saying maybe not, maybe so? I'm
saying it depends. It really depends what my objectives in that lesson is. If I was teaching the past simple, I would focus on it. If it wasn't, I wouldn't at all. And I've introduced fairly complex.
Let grammar happen.
Let it happen, especially with this, I'm talking today about young learners. So, they're very receptive. As long as the context is clear and the meaning is clear, they'll be fine. I wouldn't overcomplicate it for them at all.
And you mentioned something about, that picture, drawing a picture, which is an oldie. You want to, again, back to just some really oldie things there. And again, with drawing pictures, the picture you had was where there was a girl sitting on a sofa and behind her on the wall is a picture. And so, that's a lot of prepositions there too. So again, pre-teaching, would we teach them prepositions first?
I think, it depends. I can go back and say it always depends what the objective is. So am I using this as a test to find out what they know? In which case I wouldn't necessarily do it before, because I'm trying to see if they can, trying to ascertain how well they know these prepositions. If, however, it's not, I wouldn't choose that drawing. To be honest, that actual visual, if I was really going to use it effective in the classroom, we would already have explored a lot of the kind of vocabulary that was there, and it'd be more of an opportunity just to review it. And I would assume if they've got vocabulary like that, they would already have simple sentence structures to, the spaceship is flying. We can do a bit of present, continuous, for example.
And you talked about reading and using reading to teach listening, would you recommend that teachers use maybe simple fairy tales and paired reading, maybe something, just a short story? What would you recommend for young learners that teachers could use?
I mean, I say it's difficult one to answer because it's obviously depends on someone's context and it depends what they've got available to them. I think that is what
Mhm.
do you have essentially? Tell me what you have and we can talk about how you should use it. If you don't have a lot of stories and things, I mean, the great thing is they're always online as well, so that's really good. And then put YouTube and stuff, which is brilliant if you've got it in the classroom, or you can play it on your phone. I would personally recommend something that's not too long, because obviously there's a lot of joy in rereading, and children have a lot of joy in rereading stories and hearing them again and
Yeah,
again.
children love that.
So I suppose if it was a story for very young learners, and by that I mean like between the age of maybe 3 and kind of 8, 7, 8, I'd be looking for something quite short, something that I can read again, and we can look at different things from the second reading.
Louise, I would like to thank you for being our guest today.
Thank you.
We're a little bit pressed for time. I wish we could carry on the conversation. There's some very interesting activities that you talked about. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Mo.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Liz, for your wonderful and valuable presentation. I really enjoyed it a lot. Thank you. And of course, this webinar is recorded because we are streaming on YouTube. So everyone who wants to watch it again, you can go to our YouTube channel, Educast International, and watch whether the recording of this webinar or the recordings of the previous webinars. So thanks again, Louise, for accepting my invitation to be with us here today. It was great, just great. And of course, we're looking forward to collaborating with you soon, in some other events. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you,
for having
Louise.
me. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
So,
And Mohammed, I think
yeah,
we have a couple of announcements to make before we get into our next speaker.
sure.
And that is that after a lot of discussion and so many teachers writing us and asking us, we've decided that we're going to do a combination of a C1 English teacher training together, and we're going to mix that with just not English for teachers who want to reach a C1 level, but also we're going to combine that with methodologies, and of course it's going to be all online. I think we made that decision today, and we're going to be posting more information about that. So keep up with us on social media, where we'll be posting some things about those online classes for teachers, where it's C1 English for teachers together with methodology. So you're going to be improving your English and learning how to be a better teacher and improve your teaching practice. So
Exactly.
yeah,
That's wonderful news, because lots of teachers
it is
already have B2 level in English, and they want to advance their English. They want to have a C1 level in order to travel, in order to have scholarships, in order to be better teachers in their classes. So yes, we're offering English classes for teachers whose levels are B2 in order to be C1. So we're gonna, they're going to go through a placement test to make sure that their levels is B2, so that they can take the course with us. So that's it. Yeah. So we're looking forward to. And
I'd like to say, I'd like to say something about the placement test. Is I think that all teachers could do a grammar test online. That's pretty easy. But we're going to do a very humanistic, a holistic approach to the placements. We're going to actually meet you online, and we're just going to put you through a little placement test online live. And then you get to already see what a placement test is online. So it's going to be learning and meta learning. And what better way to not only improve your English, as a teacher, a language teacher, but also simultaneously learn new tricks for the classroom, new methods, new approaches that you can be using in your classroom after every single class that you have with us. So yeah, I look
That's
forward
right.
to that. And I think we have to
Me
already
too.
move on to our next guest.
And before that one, sorry about that. Someone was saying in the chat box that she hopes the fees would be affordable. And let me tell her that Educast is about providing highest quality education with affordable prices. We're here to help teachers. So we do really care about this. And this brings us to our next speaker. Well, Dr. Ron, our next speaker was the first one to teach me a course on how to be a confident teacher trainer, how to deliver workshops. Yeah, that was my first course. Of course, it wasn't my first course with Arizona State University because I got my TESOL certification, from there too with Dr. Shane Dixon. It's a famous course. So it's a real pleasure and honor to be having our guest for our second webinar for today, Alisa Nostas. Yeah, how are you doing?
Hi, Mohammed. Thank you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate it. And I'm very happy to be here. Should I try and share my screen?
Just
how
a
does that work?
Yeah, you can do this, of course. But let me guys tell you a little bit about Alisa. So she works at Arizona State University as a teacher educator, and an instructional designer. She has trained teachers from around the world, and she has also taught in Ecuador, Egypt, and Kuwait. Her interests include academic reading and writing, teacher education, and technology integration. Today, in this webinar, Lisa will be talking about how to be an effective teacher educator. But before starting our webinar, Alisa, let me introduce Dr. Ron Moraine.
Okay.
Yeah, he's educational consultant at Educast International and Syntax Solutions. He's from America too, by the way, but he's currently joining us from Germany. So this is Dr. Ron Moraine. This is Alisa Nostas. Ron, okay.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
And Alisa, where are you
Yeah.
coming to? Are you in Arizona?
Yes, I'm in Arizona right now.
And what city are you in?
In Phoenix.
In Phoenix.
Yes. So it's already getting very hot here. So.
Oh, really? Well, some of the hottest ever experiences I ever had in the United States. I come from Texas.
Oh, okay. That's pretty hot.
It's pretty hot, but it's hotter in Arizona, I think.
It is hotter in Arizona.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. So
it's very nice to have you here today, Alisa. And I'm going to just, turn my mic off and turn that over to you.
Great. Yeah.
Okay,
so once you're ready to share your screen, please do it.
Okay, great. Can everyone see that, hopefully? And thank you again for the introduction and everything, and I'm very happy to be here. So today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how to be an effective teacher educator. And I'm actually, as Mohammed said, I work at Arizona State University, and I work at Global Launch, which is our global training unit for English language students and professionals. So I'll get started. And this is what I would like to cover today with you. So the first thing is I'd like to define what teacher educators actually are, describe how teacher educators support teachers, and examine the continuing professional development framework, which actually comes from the British Council Teaching English, and look at the areas within that framework, which are knowledge, skills, and approaches to development. So to start, I would actually like to start with, hold on, it's going to let me.
Yeah, the poll, right?
Yes, the poll, if I can get to the next slide.
Guys, I've dropped a link in the chat box. Please go to this link and participate in this poll by answering the question. So, yeah.
Right, so this poll is, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Mohammed, because you can see it actually. I can't see it.
Yeah. So the question is, what is your current role? So are you a teacher, educator, trainer? Are you a language teacher or instructor? Are you a subject area teacher, instructor? Are you an instructional designer? Or are you a student teacher or pre-service teacher? So we're waiting for your answers. All you have to do is to click on this link and answer the question. So we're still waiting. Okay, we have an answer here. Someone says that he's a teacher trainer already. Okay, you're waiting for the rest. Okay, so we have 40% of the people here are teacher trainers. We have 20% of the people here are language instructors, and 40% are student teachers or pre-service teachers.
Okay,
Okay, so
great.
maybe yeah, so half of the people here are teacher trainers. Maybe.
Okay, great. So then I wanted to tell you, and I know Mohammed has already given me a nice introduction, but I wanted to tell you, hold on,
Yeah.
if it'll let me, I'm sorry, I'm having difficulty with okay. So what my roles are at my job at ASU. And so I would say I am maybe not a student teacher, but I'm definitely a student, because I'm always learning from my students, from my colleagues, from what I'm reading, from what I'm researching. I feel like I'm always learning, right? And I'm sure that you experience the same thing as I do. And of course, I'm a teacher. I've primarily taught in intensive English programs around the world, so university age students, but I've also taught secondary students, so middle school and high school as well. And I'm an instructional designer. I started that a couple of years ago. And, I've designed a lot of online courses. And actually, that's how I met Mohammed was I had designed some courses for the open program, or you might know it as the AE teacher program. And he was one of my students. And so I've had the opportunity to be a teacher educator through that program online, but I've also been a teacher educator or trainer in on-ground programs here at ASU. So these have been my primary roles. And so now I'd like to actually think about our confidence. This is a confidence thermometer. And I would like you to answer this question. So how confident do we feel about how to be more effective, a more effective teacher educator? So if you think, I need a bit of help, could you please write in the chat green? If you feel somewhat confident, could you please write yellow in the chat? And if you feel very confident or just confident, please write red in the chat. So far I'm seeing green, some red. Green, yellow. Okay, so it looks like we have a range of green, yellow, and red. So it's great that we have a variety here. So hopefully this webinar will actually, just raise the confidence a little bit. And of course, those of you who are red, I would welcome any comments you have, perhaps in the chat or at the end when we have the Q&A session. So, oops. So let's look now at what teacher educators are. And so I took this definition from the British Council Teaching English website, and they define teacher educators thus. Teacher educators support the professional development of prospective and practicing teachers. So obviously we're talking about both pre-service and in-service teachers. And what we can focus on is the word support. So that's what I'd like to take a look at now. What does it mean by support? How do we support the professional development of prospective and practicing teachers? And so I know some of you said you're not teacher educators, but I have a feeling that maybe perhaps after this next activity, you might think of yourself more as a teacher educator. So let's look at the next activity. And this is, this is actually a Jamboard. So if you could scan this QR code with your phones, and we're going to be looking at slides 1 and 2. And if you, if you have difficulty with that, I can give you in the chat the link. Sorry, let me just stop sharing for 1 second. I'm having difficulty.
I think it's better to drop the link in the chat box because some people might be here, through their cell phones. So it might be, a little bit difficult to get.
Yeah, okay, so sorry about that. Always technology issues, right? Okay.
Maybe, yeah.
But here, I'll put this in the chat as well, just so that everyone has that. So, and then please scan the QR code. I'll give you a second to do that. Has everyone been able to scan this? Hopefully. So in the Jamboard, the question I put there is, as teacher educators, how do we support the professional development of prospective and practicing teachers? So I want you to think about what you do to support other teachers or prospective teachers. So for example, providing in-person or online PD workshops to teachers. That's an example, and that's what we're doing. That's what I'm doing right now. So this is one way I can support teachers. So if you haven't used Jamboard before, please go here to the sticky note and click on that, write in the sticky note, and then save it. So if you can't think of anything, think also too of perhaps you mentor other teachers, right? Or perhaps you share your findings from a conference. So any of those things can be a support. Maybe just 1 more minute. Okay, so we can see some of them already on the Jamboard. These are great. So providing teachers with support and feedback, modeling at workshops, cascading any training to my colleagues via Zoom or face-to-face, conducting needs analysis through class visits to design based on the needs and next steps, building their self-confidence, modeling, sharing my classroom stories, peer observation, workshops about improving confidence. These are great. Providing teachers with blog posts about different areas of interest. So there are many ways that we can support teachers. So now I'd like to take a look actually at some of the ones that I do. So here are some of the ones that I do. I, of course, as I said, provide, in-person or online PD workshops like this one. I give in-person and online PD courses and programs as well. I mentor new teachers in my department, and I would imagine quite a few of you might do that, right? Mentoring new teachers. I guide teachers in the promotion process. The promotion process at ASU is quite complicated, so I have helped to facilitate the promotion process for teachers that are applying. I share findings from conferences or workshops attended, whether informally, like just talking to a colleague, right? Or formally, for example, at a workshop, I might present what I found or what I heard. I observe teachers and give feedback. And I've chaired committees, I've also been a member of committees that have focused on professional development. And maybe some of you have committees like this at your workplace. And I engage in action research that's focused on teacher education. And actually, the most recent action research that I've engaged in has been focused on teacher identity and teacher educator identity. And that's really been fascinating. And I think it's helped me a lot to grow as a professional. So these are just some of the ways that I support professional development. So now I'd like to turn to the continuing professional development framework. And as I said, this comes from the British Council, Teaching English, and they've divided it up into 3 areas. So the first one is knowledge. So what teacher educators need to know. The second one, skills. So what abilities teacher educators need to have. So what should they be able to do? And then finally, the approaches to development, which focuses on pursuing professional development opportunities as well as contributing to the profession. So we're going to take a look at these 3 areas in much more detail. So the first one, again, as I said, is knowledge. And I've adapted somewhat the framework for the purpose of this webinar and also just to reflect who I am as a teacher educator. So the first one is knowledge. And the first is obviously knowing the topic or the subject of the professional development opportunity. And what does it mean to know the topic or subject? So if you think about it, we need to have knowledge regarding, for example, teaching methods, assessment, the learning process, how our students learn. We also need to be up to date, I think, on the research. So we need to know the research that's out there on the subject. And we also need to know what resources are available so that we can point participants or the teachers to those resources so that they can access more information. So that's part of what knowing the topic or subject is for me. The next is what I call the PAC. So knowing the purpose, audience, and context. So knowing the purpose, right? Why are we doing this, for example, this training, this professional development opportunity? Why have I been asked to do it? So knowing that purpose, of course, knowing your audience, right? So the teachers. So what are their qualifications? What is their experience, their motivation? What are their interests? And most importantly, what are their needs? So that's all to do with the audience. And then, of course, the context, right? So what is the social cultural context? What is the educational system like? What are some of the supports and the hindrances to the teachers learning from their context? So keeping in mind the purpose, audience, and context is very important. And of course, one way you can find out much more about the purpose, audience, and context, and I think somebody mentioned this in the Jamboard, is to run a needs analysis, right? You can send out, and it can be a very simple one. It can be one that you send out through a Google form, and you ask questions about the purpose, audience, and context. The next is to know the teaching and learning process for adult professionals. So it's good to keep in mind, right, that when you're actually giving, for example, a training or a program, as a teacher educator, you're dealing with professionals and you're not dealing with your 15-year-old student anymore. So you have to keep that in mind. So you need to know the competencies that teachers need to have in order to be successful practitioners. You need to understand, I think, key theories of adult learning. You need to be aware of teachers' attitudes, beliefs, motivations. And you also need to be able to, I think, know how to overcome barriers to effective professional learning. And then finally, you need to know who you are as a teacher educator. So when I come to something like this, I'm not coming as a blank slate, right? I am bringing all my experience, my qualifications, the good, the bad, and the ugly to the experience. I'm bringing my values and my education and so on. So knowing who you are as a teacher educator, knowing your identity is really important. So I'd like to actually focus on this because this is, as I mentioned before, has been part of my action research that I've been involved in the last year or so. And so to do that, I'd like to actually do an activity with you. If it's going to let me. Okay, so this activity is actually called 3 words, and it's to look at who you are as a teacher educator. But since some of you had said you're not a teacher educator yet, or you don't feel like you are, please feel free to do this as a teacher. But I'd like you to think about 3 words that actually describe yourself as a teacher educator. So when I thought about this, and maybe this also describes me as a teacher as well, I came up with 3 words. And the 3 words that I came up with were, I'm creative. So I feel like I really enjoy coming up with, for example, different activities for us to engage in when I'm teaching. I also really, I think I try to bring creative solutions to some of the problems that come up in the training, for example. And so I feel that I am a creative teacher educator. I'm also curious. I do really want to know more. I want to know more about our field. I want to know more about other teachers. I want to know more about other contexts, because I think all of that can make me a better teacher educator. And I also think that I'm approachable, that, I feel that teachers can come to me and talk to me, and we can discuss issues and collaborate to come up with solutions. So these are just 3 words to help describe me as a teacher educator. And I hope you can understand better who I am as a teacher educator, even just through these 3 words. So now let's try together. So I would like you to think of 3 words to describe yourself as a teacher educator or as a teacher, and that's fine. And why have you chosen those words? So kind of like just what I did. And if you'd like, you could share those 3 words in the chat. So I'll just give you a few minutes to think about the 3 words, decide why you've chosen them, and then if you would like to drop them in the chat. These are great. We've already put, and Ron, I love yours, seasoned, spicy, and sassy. Okay. But we've got reachable, no threat, updated and knowledgeable, passionate, ambitious, hardworking, supportive, kind, knowledgeable, curious, passionate, caring, motivated, honest, resourceful, and passionate, approachable, creative, and curious, collaborative, curious, and creative, active, hardworking, and patient, lifelong learner, creative, passionate, energetic. That's great. Yeah, we definitely need energy, right? So these are great. Curious, lifelong learner, a collaborative helper. So all of these words, right, we can describe ourselves. And I think knowing more about yourself, who you are as a teacher educator, can really make a difference when you're in the classroom or when you're in a professional development opportunity. And if you're interested, please, in the future, do not hesitate to reach out to me, because there are many more activities that are like this that really help you to focus in on who you are as a teacher or as a teacher educator. But just in the interest of time, we're going to actually continue. And now we're going to be actually focusing on skills, or the abilities you need in order to be a successful teacher educator. So the first, obviously, is planning. And I think a lot of these are going to seem similar if you're a teacher. You need to be able to plan. So remember, we were talking about that needs analysis. So you can bring that needs analysis in to inform how you plan that professional development opportunity. But you need to be able to create SMART objectives. You need to be able to include materials that will help to convey the information well. You need to plan interactive activities. And you need to also, of course, include assessments, how you're going to assess, when you're going to assess. And all of this needs to be organized into a coherent, logical plan. Okay, just like when we teach. The next is your ability to deliver content in a meaningful way. And of course, I think one of the big parts of this is you need to be able to communicate clearly the content. And you need to use, I think, within that communication, you need to use a range of participant-centered and interactive strategies, because, I think I found, especially with adult professionals, that's what they want. They want to be involved. They want to be in participant-centered trainings, for example. And you need to integrate technology, right? Technology is definitely here to stay, and it's important to integrate it into your delivery. And you need to, of course, manage and monitor. And the last is model. I think this is one of the most important things about delivering, for example, a professional development opportunity. You are the model, right? When the teachers are there looking at you, watching you, maybe, hopefully, if you've done it well, they're going to take some of your strategies, some of your ideas, and use them in their classrooms. So you are a model for them. And so delivering a well-organized, well-planned, interactive professional development opportunity is very important. So, of course, you need to be able to evaluate the participants well. So there can be a variety of ways you can evaluate the adult professionals that you're engaged with. That could be through observation. It could be through student feedback, your feedback. It could be through self-assessment. When I'm engaged in this, I do a lot of reflection. And the biggest thing I think to keep in mind when you're evaluating, especially these adult professionals, is that it needs to be transparent and fair. If it's not, you'll definitely hear about it from them. So, and of course, you need to be able to reflect on the professional development. What I mean by this is you need to be able to look at what you've just done, for example, and say, hey, what were some of the strengths of this professional development opportunity? What did I do well? What did the participants do well? And then you also need to look on the other side of the coin. So you need to say, okay, what were some of the challenges that we face? What were some of the issues? How can I solve those issues for the next time? So being able to reflect on that is very important. And finally, I think one of the most important and one of the most challenging skills is the ability to sustain the engagement. So what I mean by that is being able to make sure that the participants use what they gain from the professional development opportunity beyond that opportunity itself. So I was just thinking about this the other day because I have just come back from TESOL International in Oregon. And I heard so many great ideas, from many different presenters. But I know now that I'm probably maybe going to use one idea or two ideas, and that's about it, right? Because I don't have a clear plan on how to sustain the engagement beyond the TESOL convention. And so you as teacher educators, you have the onus or the responsibility to make sure that participants have a clear plan on how to sustain engagement. So to help us to look at this last more challenging skill, I'd like to, sorry, I'm having technology issues. I'd actually like to go back to the Jamboard. And if you could, again, scan the QR code, or perhaps you already have it open. And we're actually going to go to slide 3 on the Jamboard. And I can, again, drop in the chat the link as well, if that's needed. And so if you could scan this again and go to slide 3. And on slide 3, so you just need to click up here if you need to get to the next slide. I want you to look at this question and try to answer it. So the question is, what activities will help teachers to sustain engagement with the professional development? So one way to do this that I've done before is to develop an action plan with clear steps on how the teachers will sustain the professional development. And so I'd like you to try to come up with different ideas about how you could possibly help teachers to sustain the engagement. Or perhaps you already do this yourself as a teacher, so you could write that idea as well. I'll give you a few minutes to do this. Okay, great. It looks like we've got some great ideas here. And so we have things like instructional coaching, right, when possible, offering a variety of professional development formats and modalities, workshops, courses, certificates, conferences, online learning. That's great. Zoom follow-ups. Yep, so getting chances to apply what they've learned with real students and getting feedback. Scheduling semi-formal interviews to discuss challenges and achievements later on. Yes, through reflection and feedback. Giving teachers options to courses and giving them autonomy of choice upon their personal needs and preferences. Joining a teacher community or fellow educators like Ron and Mose on Facebook. Yes, that's definitely one great way to sustain engagement. Join Educast. Yes, very much so. Quizzes maybe afterward. Right, so there are many different ways. These are great, thank you. And I just wanted to share now some of the ways that I have done so. And so again, developing that action plan, connecting more through social media. So I am not a huge fan of social media, but I do recognize its power, right? Through Facebook, LinkedIn, everything that Educast is actually doing, all that is definitely connecting, helping to connect and to sustain engagement. Continuing learning through study groups, whether that's, more like formal, like professional learning communities, or even just in your workplace, right? So if you go to a conference, you learn about assessment, then maybe you set up a study group, right, in your department, and you continue your learning that way. Engaging in action research together, I think this is a very powerful tool as well in order to sustain the engagement. So as if you go to a training on assessment, and then you decide you want to engage in action research about assessment with your colleagues, that's a great way to continue the engagement. Form groups to examine student work, which I think probably a lot of places do this, and create and attend mini conferences on that topic. So these are some ways that you can sustain professional development as well as the ideas you had on the Jamboard. And again, it depends on your context. It depends on your teachers. Sorry, this is just very temperamental. Okay, so we're going to look at the last part of the adapted continuing professional development framework, which is approaches to development. And these two are based on developing yourself professionally and developing the profession. So the first one is engaging in pursuing professional development opportunities, which is what you're doing right now, actually. And then the second one is contributing to the profession. And this, of course, I think we already do this, right? We do this even if it's just at the micro level, right? Just mentoring other teachers, or it could be even at the more of a macro level, in the sense of maybe you're engaging in research and then you publish that research. And so all of these, it runs the gamut in terms of contributing to the profession, but all of them do contribute to the profession. So what I'd like to do is, I know we're getting close on time, but what I'd like to do is have you share in the chat one example of how you have contributed to the profession. So if you take a few minutes, think about that and write maybe just one example of how you think you've contributed to the profession. And again, it can be on a much smaller scale or a much larger scale. Okay, so we have things like sharing your 35 plus years of experience, which is great. Organizing an international conference, connecting people from over 50 countries, right, through Educast. Listening to my colleagues' brainstorms, Zoom trainings, providing social media communities of practice for teachers and teachers educators. That's great. Part of many COP groups where I share, help, ask, and comment. That's great, Marwa. And sharing ideas in workshops and and school meetings. Yeah. So, I think a lot of us do that, even just as teachers, right? We contribute to our profession. And by contributing in that way, right, we're also educating others. And so we're already acting as teacher educators. So, and anything else? Oh, sorry, there's a few more. Training hundreds of novice and experienced teachers. That's great. Sharing the knowledge I attained from workshops with colleagues. Yes, definitely very important. Scaffolding new teachers to find their way to the profession through class visits and post-visit conferences. training at school, providing guidance and mentorship. Yeah, these are all great. So we already do contribute a lot to the profession. So we're definitely on the road to being teacher educators, and very effective ones at that. So let's go back to the confidence thermometer that we saw at the beginning of this presentation. So given what we've discussed, how confident do we feel now about how to be a more effective teacher educator? So if you could again write in the chat, green, yellow, or red, depending on what is written here. So if it's green, I still need a bit of help. Yellow, I feel more confident, or red, I feel very confident. So if you could take a minute to add that to the chat, green, yellow, or red. Okay, great. So I'm seeing just more yellow and red, so not as many, no more green. Okay, that's good. I'm glad. That's what we want. No more green. It's just, at least we have some tools. So, so I'd like to now, I don't know if we have enough time, Ron and Mohammed, but I was going to open it up for question and answers, and then give a little bit more information after that. So
I have to move you to another screen here first. Okay. Thank you, Alyssa. That was very, very interesting. I would just like to add that no matter how many years we have been teaching as a teacher, that it's always good to come to something like this and just be reminded and as a refresher of what we should be doing as teacher educators. So thank you very much for that. It's like a repeat, but I can never get enough. You can never hear it enough. And everybody who's in the audience today, I want to tell you, I'm 64 years old and I have to be reminded of this every year. Okay. So we do have to be reminded of it. So thank you for tackling that and walking us through that. I'd like to ask you a question, and maybe you have that link. I do know that Cambridge does have their CPD framework as a PDF. Would you happen to have that
yes,
to share that with us?
Yes, I do actually. It's right here.
Okay, perfect. Yeah.
And
if you could just put that into the chat box.
Yeah, and actually this QR code will give everyone access to this presentation. So you'll be able to access that. So if you scan that, you'll have access. And I would love for us to sustain this engagement through connecting more. So please feel free to email me or to find me on Facebook. And actually, if you don't mind, if you could please just direct message me before so I know who you are, I would appreciate it. And but this is the link to the Continuing Professional Development Framework. And so let me just go quickly then over what that's offered in it. So here is the actual framework, Ron, which you're asking about, which is the PDF.
I use it so that I use it. So
okay,
I want everybody to have that because it's great.
Right.
It's just a great document. It's a great site to go to.
Right. And there's a lot of other tools here that you can use, as well as the CPD framework, but there's also the self-assessment tool and profile chart. There are webinars listed here. There's the newsletter, and that's how actually I found about this. I subscribe to the Teacher Educator newsletter. And there's also a certificate program if anyone is interested in that, as well as some of the things that we were talking about. They've actually divided it up. And so you can find articles, webinars, and publications that you can access if you're so interested. So I'll put this in the chat as well.
I took a screenshot, Alyssa, if you don't mind, of the QR code with the thing.
Yes.
And I'm going to post that. Mo can post that. If you don't mind, we can post that on social media. Okay.
Right. Yeah, no, that's fine. So please, yes. And hopefully we can sustain the engagement as well. So.
Another question I have for you, Alyssa. You mentioned that there were a lot of things that we need to know as teachers. And I recently wrote an article about my teacher philosophy. And I know you know something about that because that is part of our teacher identity. And part of also teacher identity is what we as teachers define for ourselves as teacher efficacy. So could you just maybe tell us about a little, just in maybe a quick little thing of what is teacher philosophy?
Yeah, so I mean, I think you could look at it in different ways, but I think a lot of us, especially as pre-service teachers, were required to write a teaching philosophy.
That's right.
And I always found it so burdensome in some ways. I think especially as a pre-service teacher, because I didn't feel like I knew who I was as a teacher yet. And I mean, I had read all these theories and done some research, but I didn't know anything about being a practitioner so much when I first wrote my teaching philosophy. So when I look back at my teaching philosophy from then, I don't think it reflects who I am. So for me, a teaching philosophy is more about my identity, as you were saying, is about my identity as a teacher and all of the offshoots of that. So it is about who I am in the classroom, how I interact with students, what do I bring to the table that furthers that interaction, and how do I ensure that my students are learning. And that might be through the strategies that I employ, but it could also be even through how I ensure that diversity is celebrated, that everyone has access to the resources, that that it's an inclusive classroom. So I try to bring in what I want, who I am and what I want that classroom to look like in my teaching philosophy. But I think a lot of the times when we're required to write a teaching philosophy, we don't really have as much of an idea. So I think it would be a much better practice for me now as a teacher with, years,
we can reflect,
many more years.
We can reflect. We have experience. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And I think that's when I feel like I'm much better equipped, but I feel like it's also something that is going to be obviously an ever evolving document, because I'm not going to be the same in 1 year or 2 years or 5 years. And I'm sure you can attest to that with your 35-year plus experience, right? You've definitely changed.
Alyssa, I would never show anyone the original one.
Okay.
Never. I hope they never find it. Because I know that when I read it, and I think it's important to say here that if you don't know what teaching philosophy is, you can find the article that I wrote on social media. You can Google teaching philosophy, what that is. There's a lot of great YouTube videos on teaching philosophy and how to write a teaching philosophy statement. And thank you, Alyssa, for saying that it's an ongoing document. It's a living document. It's going to change because we change as teachers. We develop, and that's why CPD is important, because that one thing you can always go back to is that statement that you wrote, and you don't have to tell anybody about it, but write it to yourself maybe, and go back and check it every now and then. That's my suggestion for that.
Right.
Alyssa, I have one more question for you.
Yes, of course.
A lot of the experience that we gain as teachers, you mentioned that you had just come back from TESOL, and it's always great, to go and be with colleagues, network. I think I've been to every single conference on this planet, and I have to say that, but we can get overwhelmed with all of that, and we, don't always know what to do with all of that information. And we as teachers, I think it's just naturally instinctive that we hoard a lot of things. We always want the materials because we think we're going to use them one day or whatever. And then we wind up with a room full of things we've never used.
Right.
Alyssa, from all the conferences that you've ever been to, and some of the things that you've heard at CPD events, what is that one thing that you learned from another teacher and went back to the room and immediately tried it out?
I would say it's actually the really small things, right? It might be like, I think a long time ago, I went to a conference and they started talking about Quizlet.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, you probably are, everyone probably knows Quizlet right now at this point, but this was when it was first new.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was easy to access. I could easily, I figured it out. I like technology. So, it really, jived with who I am as a teacher. And so that was something I used right away because it was
Mm-hmm.
easy and accessible.
Mm-hmm.
And
you hit the nail right on the head. We usually, as teachers, seek things that are easy to use, accessible, and that we can quickly practice and take risk in using in the classroom.
mm-hmm.
I think that's, look for those kinds of things. I think that's what I want to say on that one.
Mm-hmm.
Look for things that fit to your context, that is easy for you to use. Try it out, take risk, and then see how it works, reflect on it. Alyssa, I want to thank you. You can quit sharing screens. I want to thank you for being our guest today. And I'm going to turn this over to Mo.
Yeah, thank you. It was, invaluable, to be honest. Yeah, I really enjoyed it a lot. And I feel I really feel, enthusiastic to attend any webinar with you because I've learned a lot from you, and of course the people here, enjoyed a lot. They learned a lot. You can see in the comments in the chat box, people, are engaged. Someone was, talking about using Jamboard as an engaging tool. Yeah, it works perfectly. Sometimes, in my teacher training workshops, programs, I don't use it, although I know it. But
Mm-hmm.
a webinar like this reminds me of how important it is. And instead of sending the people into the breakout rooms and waste some time because of the technical issues that happening every single moment.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we can use Jamboard to engage our learners, to have an interactive session.
Mentimeter. Mentimeter.
Yeah, Mentimeter. Yeah, that's right. And Padlet, serves, the same cause. So the people here are thanking you in the chat box, and I would like to thank you for being with us here at Educast. It's a great honor. I told you at the very beginning of Educast, and you saw before what I was doing sometime in the past, when I first founded all of this. So it's a real pleasure to be having you here today after 1 year of achievements, after training teachers, after organizing conferences and events, webinars. So thank you a lot.
Yeah, no, thank you. And it just really warms my heart, especially to see Mohammed, who I knew, I think 2018, right, Mohammed? You took my course?
Yeah.
2018, and just to see how far you've come.
You see, Alyssa,
it's just amazing.
You see, you have your student here, and somehow I met him last year, and I thought, I'm going to mentor this guy. I'm going to work with him. So, he's still in good hands. He's learning. He's great. He's done some wonderful work, and he's doing, there's just so much to look forward to.
Yes.
That I love working with him. I can't believe he's one of those teachers I like working with.
We're both learning from each other a lot. Every single day we have a discussion. We learn from each other a lot. And as I always say, everything that happens to us every day is a good learning experience. Just like, this webinar, just like this wonderful discussion with both of you.
Well, so like Alyssa said, we got to be a lifelong learner. And I'm 64 years old, and I have to say that I felt refreshed and reinvigorated working with Mo. He's so full of energy. And I was like, God, I remember I used to have that energy 25 years ago.
Lisa, I'm going to tell you a secret, because this energy is a little bit contagious. He has to take a rest every week, He doesn't talk to me.
I always tell them, after having these discussions with you, I have to go take a nap.
I'm sure. Requires a lot of energy, right? Yeah. But we need to be energetic as teachers and teacher educators. So.
And that's right. It's just how the cycle of learning works. And here we have three people, we never met each other, we didn't even know each other, and now all of a sudden we see how all that works. And for everyone here in the room, just know that, if you're a teacher, you got to be a lifelong learner, and that you can always be learning something new, and there's going to always be somebody who knows more than you.
Very true. Very true. So that's why I always say that I'm a student as well, right?
That's right.
I'm
I told my
constantly
father
learning.
that, and my father said, "What do you mean you're a student? You're supposed to be a teacher." And I was like, "Yeah, Dad, well, that was like that when you were young." I go, "But today teachers are students."
Uh-huh.
I can't believe they pay you for that.
So I'd like to end this with a quote by Chris Martin, a British singer in the Coldplay band. I'd rather be a comma, not a full stop. So this is what we're all trying to do. We're trying to learn, we're trying to share, we're trying to provide others with opportunities every single day. That's why, I founded Educast at the very beginning, to provide teachers with opportunities, with knowledge, with high quality education, in an affordable way. They can learn for free. They can attend our webinars, conferences, workshops. So yes, one day, for example, one is coming to Cairo this year to do some workshops. Maybe you, Elisa, one day can come, at one of our on-site or online conferences. Would be a real pleasure. So all what we're doing here is trying to share knowledge, providing opportunities, and keep learning from each other. So yes, we're learning from other people here in the webinar, in the chat box. We're looking at other ideas, new ideas. I myself learned from the ideas of the people, in the Jamboard. So yes, we're all learning from each other. That's right.
I
Okay.
always start my workshops, my teacher workshops at the university and all throughout the world when I travel and do them. I start them with 3 words and I end them with 3 words. Teachers need teachers. We need each other. We have to support each other. We have to learn, and we have to be nice to each other too. Okay? We have to be nice. Yeah. But I'll end it by saying teachers need teachers. Remember that.
That's
See
right.
you, everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
See you in
everyone.
another webinar. Yeah. So guys, if you want to keep to stay updated with our upcoming webinars, please follow us on Facebook. Okay. This is our page in the chat box. If you're not following us yet, so please go there, follow us. You will find lots of interesting stuff, webinars. So yes, educast.eg. Okay, or search for this name on Facebook. That's my Facebook account. You can find me there. I post wonderful stuff there about teaching. I post about the webinars and everything. Even you can listen to my podcast. I've just released the new episode of my podcast, Educast Interviews, with the wonderful teacher trainer and the materials writer, Catherine Billsborough. So thanks everyone for attending with us today, and we're all looking forward to seeing you in our next webinar. Thanks again, and goodbye.